Now, a major development in the Ukraine war. US President Donald Trump has said that his administration has fine-tuned its original 28-point peace plan aimed at ending the nearly 4-year-long war between Russia and Ukraine. The revised proposal, drafted by Washington and worked on jointly with Ukrainian officials during the talks in Geneva, now incorporates inputs from both sides, with Trump claiming that only a few points of disagreements remain. On what Washington insiders are calling the Thanksgiving deadline for the Ukraine-Russia peace plan, US President Donald Trump has signaled that the conflict may be moving towards a decisive phase. Speaking aboard Air Force One, he indicated that while timelines have been discussed, the real objective is to bring the war to a close. A war that he stressed has exhausted all sides and cost far too many lives.
If Witkoff is going to Russia next week, does that mean that Thanksgiving deadline doesn't stand anymore for Ukraine to agree to this deal?
What happens? They set up a date, and the date is going to be sometime in the very near future.
Do you have a new deadline for a deal to be reached?
I don't have a deadline. You know what the deadline for me is? When it's over. And I think everybody's tired of fighting at this moment. They're losing too many people.
And Donald Trump confirmed that Special Envoy Steve Witkoff will travel to Moscow next week to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin, while U.S. Army Secretary Dan Driscoll will hold parallel consultations with Ukrainian officials later this week in Kyiv. The U.S. president says he hopes to meet both Putin and Ukrainian President Zelenskyy, but only when the deal is in its final stages. Ukraine, meanwhile, signaled that a common understanding has been reached with the United States on board framework of the peace plan. But President Zelenskyy stressed that Europe must remain involved and called for a reassurance force to support Kyiv until Russia shows genuine intent to end hostilities. His remarks came on a day when Kyiv suffered one of its heaviest overnight strikes, with missiles and drones killing several people and disrupting heating and power infrastructure. US and Ukrainian officials have been working intensely to narrow gaps, particularly on territorial concessions, which remain the most contentious issue. Kyiv fears being pressurized into accepting terms largely aligned with Moscow's demands, including ceding additional territory, curbs on its military, and permanently abandoning any NATO ambitions. Russia, too, has drawn red lines. Foreign Minister Lavrov has warned that Moscow could reject any amended US proposal if it deviates from the spirit and letter of the understanding reached between Putin and Trump during the Alaska summit. French President Macron has called this moment a critical juncture, emphasizing that any durable peace must be accompanied by robust, not merely symbolic, security guarantees for Ukraine.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy said on Tuesday that Ukraine was ready to advance a US-backed framework for ending the war with Russia, and discussed disputed points with US President Donald Trump in talks he said should include European allies. Underlining the high stakes for Ukraine, its capital Kyiv was hit by a barrage of missiles and hundreds of drones overnight in a Russian strike that killed several people and again disrupted power and heating systems. Residents were seen sheltering underground, wearing winter jackets, some in tents. US and Ukrainian officials have been trying to narrow the gaps between them over the plan to end the conflict, with Ukraine wary of being strong-armed into accepting a deal largely on Russia's terms, including territorial concessions. Kyiv's message hinted that an intense diplomatic push by the Trump administration could be making progress.
So I think we're getting very close to a deal. We'll find out.
But any optimism could be short-lived, especially as Russia stressed it would not let any deal stray too far from its own objectives. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said an amended peace plan must reflect the, quote, spirit and letter of an understanding reached between Putin and Trump at their Alaska summit in August.
Дух и буква Anchorage.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said on X that the U.S. had made tremendous progress towards a deal over the past week, adding that there are, quote, a few delicate but not insurmountable details that remain. French President Emmanuel Macron, in a call with a group of countries supporting Ukraine, known as the Coalition of the Willing, said talks were at a critical juncture.
The absolute condition for a good peace is a set of very robust security guarantees and not paper guarantees.
The 28-point peace plan that emerged last week caught many in the U.S. government, Kyiv, and Europe alike off guard. The plan would require Ukraine to cede territory beyond the almost 20% of the country that Russia has captured since its February 2022 full-scale invasion, as well as accept curbs on its military and bar it from ever joining NATO. Conditions Kyiv has long rejected as tantamount to surrender.